Good afternoon. Welcome to this afternoon's discussion about policing in our country at this time. I'm Lynda Day. I'm a historian and professor of Africana Studies at Brooklyn College. I'm the author of Making a Way to Freedom, A History of African Americans on Long Island, and Another History of Women Chiefs in Sierra Leone. And I'm a member of the Growing Circle for Justice. The Growing Circle of Justice has come together to try to deal with and engage these issues of policing. To quote Professor Alex Vitale, for decades now, communities have been told that the only resource they can have to address their community problems is more policing and more incarceration. But he points out that our job is to lay out what the alternatives could look like and give people a sense that they have the power to ask for what they really want. So our aim here is to engage in a conversation about what it is that we really want. Our organization, Growing Circle for Justice, aims to foster a space for all stakeholders to come together and share their thoughts about our community's needs with respect to policing and social human services to foster healthy, thriving local communities. Even Pat Lynch of the New York City PBA has asked, what does the public want of its police? What does the public want its police to do? Of course, Growing Circle for Justice does not prescribe or recommend what local communities should do. Like the conversations we're having today, we call on community groups around the country to engage in similar dialogues. That is to reimagine the police force and the community of the 21st century. Many have called for defunding the police, getting rid of police as we know it. What would that mean? What should we do? That's what this afternoon's conversation will deal with. This afternoon, we have with us a distinguished panel. We have with us joining Art Acevedo. He's the incumbent police chief of the Houston Police Department. He previously held the same position at the Austin Police Department, following a career with the California Highway Patrol. Mr. Acevedo, Chief Acevedo, has recently drawn national attention for his willingness to critique the current state of policing.
Well, because I think that we really are at a watershed moment in our nation's history where, 240 something years since our independence, and we're still not where we need to be in terms of race relations or in terms of the way that this nation, the promise of this nation, is kept for everyone, including people of color. And so law enforcement's the most visible cog in government. And I think that change starts with us, but it can't end with us. We deal with a lot of the shortcomings of society. And so I think it's important for us to be part of the conversation, hopefully part of the solution, and the advocacy for fairness and equality and equal opportunity across all segments of society.
We have with us Dominick Braswell, a New York City community organizer who works predominantly in poor, working class, Black and brown neighborhoods. His organizing work has focused on empowering poor, working class communities to handle and try to assess their own problems jointly. Dominick received his BA in Africana Studies from Brooklyn College and will begin a PhD program in FM Studies at the University of Massachusetts Amherst in the fall. We will have with us Pascale Jean-Noel. She's the Director of Training for the Assertive Community Treatment Institute. She trains other mental health counselors in person-centered treatment planning at the Center for Practice Innovations at Columbia University and the New York State Office of Mental Health.
Okay, I'm looking to continue a discussion on how it's important to understand the individuals that are working as police officers, understanding their beliefs, their values, and how that translates into how they work with the community. Working with clinicians to understand who they are, what are their values as well, how they identify, and how that translates into their service delivery. I think this is so important. And so much of what we don't do, we talk about how to fix others while there's some work that needs to be done within. And it's so important when we're in these roles that really require us to help guide people and to help navigate safety for people in their lives, whether it's helping them with their mental health or whether it's helping to keep the community safe, that we understand why we're doing it. We're understanding and we're respecting the individuals that we're servicing. Just because they suffer with a mental health diagnosis, or they may be someone who has been influenced by their community and the oppression and the racism within their community, doesn't mean that they're not a human being. Doesn't mean that they don't need time and respect to understand who they are. And also, as we approach them and work with them, that we respect who they are so that we can help do what we came to do. And if that is to be of service, to help someone with their mental illness, then that's what you do. But if I don't feel comfortable about who you are and I don't respect you, I'm not going to be able to do that. If that is being a police officer and navigating safety for the community, I need to respect and understand what this community is about. And this individual that's within this community, what happened or what is happening that is perpetuating this. And while that is happening, how do we still respect this person and still be of service?
We have with us also Professor Peniel Joseph, whose scholarship has focused on Black Power studies. He holds a joint professorship at the LBJ School of Public Affairs and the History Department at the University of Texas, Austin. He is also the founding director of the LBJ School's Center for the Study of Race and Democracy. Professor Joseph has written Dark Days, Bright Nights, From Black Power to Barack Obama, and most recently, Stokely, A Life, the definitive biography of Stokely Carmichael, aka Kwame Ture, the former SNCC activist who popularized the phrase Black Power.
Okay, we're at a critical moment in American and world history. The call to defund the police is the new abolitionism. In the 19th and 18th century, calls for abolition were considered too radical. Calls for voting rights for African Americans and women's suffrage was considered too radical. Calls for racial integration and desegregation of public schools were considered too radical. So the move to defund police, abolish prisons, which grassroots activists have been talking about for decades and decades, is really the civil and human rights movement of our time, along with this call for Black Lives Mattering. So defunding the police is the only moral and ethical way forward, and everyone who's saying something different is on the wrong side of history.
We also have with us Gabrielle Powell, who is a coordinator for a crime victim nonprofit organization working out of the criminal courts in Brooklyn. She is also a Brooklyn College alumni with a concentration in cultural anthropology. Gabrielle is the organizer of a Brooklyn-based support group for survivors of sexual trauma that focuses on creating community and visibility among survivors.
So we've relied on police to address a wide variety of issues, and many people are calling for new support systems that can respond in their stead. And a lot of folks are looking to social services to do that work. But I think we need to pause and think a little more about what is going to replace what. We get lost in this conversation because, it's very difficult to reform and reshape something that has its foundation and its material that isn't sound. It's made of elements that aren't sound. And capitalism and structural violence is the foundation. It is the material that our country's been built with. So we need to question the history and current practices of any agency that's going to be funded or organized by the state. And we need to figure out how we can focus on grassroots level organizations who already exist in the community to do that work, and how we can support them before we consider putting in tainted organizations.
And we have with us Alex Vitale, professor of sociology and coordinator of the Policing and Social Justice Project at Brooklyn College, and a visiting professor at London South Bank University. Professor Vitale is the author of the 2017 book, The End of Policing, which has become an influential text for the current movement to fundamentally reshape policing.
Well, I think the moment we're in right now is demanding that we have a critical examination of what it is we've asked police to do and whether or not really they're the right tool for accomplishing these things. At root, what we're seeing is a movement that's demanding public safety be generated at the community level and rely as little as possible on the use of armed police to achieve that.
And with that, I would like to start off our discussion by asking a question of Chief Acevedo.